today. All the doors and windows and everything locked. Is the sound booth locked? Yeah! Are you sure? We don't want, look, we love Mr. Earth Lizard Evolutionary Science, but we don't want Mr. Dower or any of the rest here today because we have a special guest and all of America, in fact the world, needs to hear this guest. So are you sure everything's locked down? I'm sure, dang it. It's my job. Well, thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, who we have here today is the Spirit of 1776. Mr. Spirit of 1776. Well, thank you, my good man. Now, sir, what we would like to talk to you about are, well, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I know that you come from a place of calm and knowledge and wisdom because you've been through it all. You were there then, you were there with the Founding Fathers. You know everything about what they were discussing, their concerns and worries, and you've been here all along watching us, and you know exactly where we are and what we're facing. And America, and in fact, those that love first principles and liberty and their God-given free will, all around the world, Western culture, whatever it might be, folks that are trying to escape tyranny, they need to hear this to help put in perspective what America was meant to be and what the founders were trying to do and what we're supposed to be today versus what the enemy, tyranny, and Marxist leftist feminism is trying to do to us today. Well, my good man, that was quite the litany. Well, thank you, sir. I'm assuming that's a compliment. Well, take it as you will. Now, my good man, I understand that we will be meeting again soon for a supper conversation. So let's try to keep this short and to the point so that I have time to go back to my quarters and change my attire for a dinner, supper, and prepare for quite a nice meal, as I understand it. Yes, sir, we do have quite the menu for you. We took your suggestions. And well, let me say, sir, though, back in the day, with the founders, they pretty much ate what they wanted as much as they wanted, and it's surprisingly, more folks weren't overweight. Well, my good man, we knew quite a bit more, it seems, about dietary proportions and the importance of eating protein and fat versus what you do in America today, and that's why you have so many obese people. But we'll leave that for the supper conversation. Well, thank you, sir. Now, sir, I know you have very strong opinions, and you've been trying to warn lovers of liberty and freedom about what's going on in America. And I just want to say, sir, so many on the left, sir, my good man, let me stop you there. It's important to understand the difference between today's conservative and today's Democrat Party, which is nothing more than a network, a coalition, a coven of Marxist leftist feminism. Why are they cheering that? Well, sir, we like to cheer good points, and that was an awesome point. Well, my good man, thank you. So, what you have here is America is suffering from an identity crisis. And it's no wonder, we've been telling you for decades upon decades, that you cannot turn over your educational system to an enemy construct, which you've done. You've basically let Stalin and Mao take over your educational system. Now, sir, would you please elaborate on that? That's quite spicy, what you're saying. Well, it's not meant to be spicy, it's just true. This is part of the problem, is none of you have a historical perspective. You must not read. When I look around, everybody's staring at their electronic device. It's surprisingly more and more people aren't being run over by the cars when they cross the road. It's that bad. Oh, I agree with that point. Yes, they do, sir. So what's going on is that decades and decades ago, you allowed Stalin and Mao, the infiltrators, the spies, to infiltrate your educational system with spies, cohorts, and those that were drafted to be part of the propaganda war in America. See, one of the things that's clear that Stalin and Mao knew they could not compete with the free America. They could not compete with the genius and the ingenuity and creativity in America, and that is a creativity and ingenuity that's defined by a free people. Not a perfect people, but a free people. Free to become more perfected, like your more perfected union, and free to engage in enterprise, free to fail, free to succeed. And that led to the creativity, ingenuity, and the grand standards of America. Let's not dismiss the beauty and power of Judeo-Christian ethic and tenets of ethical monotheism. Right? It's a great astonishment to get a cheer when one speaks of ethical monotheism in America today. If America could find a way back to that, she would find her way back to her genius and her more perfected union. Thank you. So what you had Stalin and Mao using their propaganda to infiltrate the weakest points in America. And the weakest points in America, without any wonderment, was its educational system, where it was kind of live and let live, and folks wanted to feel like they were accepting and erudite and classically liberal, accepting other world beliefs and understandings and so forth. But what you did is you let the camel nose underneath the tent. You allowed evil to infiltrate your educational system. At the same time, Marxist leftist feminism was telling you it was wrong to pray for your fellow man, to have any reverence for the Almighty God in your educational system. You turned your back and you allowed that evil, that propaganda from Stalin and Mao, to infiltrate and start to undermine your children's belief system and the foundation and principles of first principles and liberty and their God-given free will. And then that dysfunction began to network. And that network decided that it was safe for it to have its own opinion and stand and start to make you, those with the majority correct, righteous position, begin to make you feel insecure about your choice and your stance. Make you feel bad and guilty about yourself. But all that was is the evil, the propaganda from Stalin and Mao, and I must say it was repackaged and repurposed by Saul Alinsky. And if you want to read more about that, we've heard RHO-TORICAL speak about that, because Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radicals, addresses this. And that's how it was repackaged and repurposed for people like the Clintons and the Obamas and all these leftists running around, like Soros and Steyer and all these people that are truly they're enemies of the United States of America. They won't say that because they want to steal the infrastructure of America, the very foundation and the very skeletal design of America, and it's out to make it into a Marxist, leftist, feminist haven. For what will become evil? It can't help but become evil, because where masculinity slinks and cowers, evil surely strives to survive and flourish. Well, sir, that right there, that was a wonderment of what you just said. Where Marxist leftist feminism flourishes where male masculinity is diminished, and that allows for great evil. Well, that's right, my good man. That's true. That goes back in history. Any time a tyrant wanted to rule, one of the first things that tyrant would do is get control of the masculine voice. It would either kill off the masculine voice, subdue it by putting it in prison, and then it would take over the educational system and start quieting those boys and teaching those boys to be more like girls, to be effeminate males. Males by DNA, but not thinking. No heart of the lion, no mind of the lion, because that's what tyranny means. Then you see that in your movies. your sci-fi movies. We see that you saw that demonstrated in the Matrix movies, right? The whole idea of taking a blue pill versus a red pill. The blue pill was subduing, and the people lived a make-believe life that the tyranny wanted them to believe. The red pill woke them up to the reality, to be free, to make their own choices, own decisions, to be their own man, their own woman, to be who they were meant to be by design, accordance to the God-given free will, and by accordance of liberty and justice and freedom. But see, the enemy in America today, and in fact throughout the world of Western culture, is to make the male feel timid, to make the male more feminine-like, and the femininity doesn't exist in leftism. What it does is it makes the female unrooted, untethered, delusional. And this is what you hear when you listen to the people out of Hollywood in Silicon Valley. In fact, in our day, we would have said they were the dumbest dumps around. And so, good one, sir. Well, it wasn't meant to be good. It was meant to be true. Well, it's about time. Well, my good man, so what you have is you have a bunch of dumb stumps that because of the electronic age, they can network, and because they network, they feel self-important like there's more of them than there really is, and then they have a car. But what you just need to do is tell them to shut up and ignore them. Shut up and ignore them. Do you know how many of your troubles in America would go away if you tell them to shut up and you ignore them? Ignore the minority. Just because the minority might have a political voice doesn't mean it needs to win, doesn't need to rule. Tell it to shut up and rebuke it, reject it, and ridicule it. Well, sir, that's pretty simple and, at the same time, very empowering. Well, of course it is. Why do you fear the minority voice? All this stuff and the ever-growing acronym and all this stuff, you're going to change all of society for transgenderism? No. In our day, we wish every adult, we add on the side of responsibility for the adult. Let the adults pretty much do what they want as long as they don't impact, harm the neighbor, and they don't degrade the social standard. That's the difference. There's a difference between the social standard that maintains society and how you interact with your friends and family and your neighbor. You might give your neighbor a bit of room. You might give them some nudging room, some leeway. But that doesn't mean you want the standard diminished. You might allow your neighbor to calculate an error into the building of let's say a common fence, a courtesy fence, right? Now maybe the courtesy fence was supposed to be 6 feet tall, exactly. But your neighbor used a ruler that was a bit short, and so your fence is a bit shy of 6 feet tall. Now, you appreciate that your neighbor interacted with you and was cordial about it, and it's a courtesy fence, right, for both benefits, to benefit both parties. So you might let that go, and it might be quite all right and never lead to an issue. But you don't want society as a whole now calling your 1-foot ruler saying that it's 11 inches rather than 12. Because the impact of society is graver than the potential impact in your realm, in your small enclave of your friends and family. There's a difference between how you interact with your neighbors and friends and your belief that the social standard must be maintained for the good of all of society. That's the difference sometimes between true justice, legal justice, and empathy and compassion and mercy. In your own life, you might exhibit compassion, empathy, and mercy, but on the social standard, it might be a hard, more difficult consequences coming the way of someone you care very deeply about. Well, sir, so can we bring this back to, what's going on in America, the difference between the conservatives and... My good man, I'm getting there. You need to hear the story because you and yours are lacking on the foundational principles and understanding what's been going on. And thank you, sir. Thank you for your patience with me. Well, my good man, it's quite my privilege. So, what's been going on with you is that you had an enemy construct propagandizing against America for its principles of liberty and your God-given free will. And Stalin and Mao knew that if they could separate America from her founding principles and her reverence for liberty and your founding documents, Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and your God-blessed Bill of Rights, folks. You really need to thank God for those Bill of Rights and understand them better. They stand between you and a tyrannical government. They're not for the federal government. They're not even to be pointed at by the federal government, except in how they bow to them and revere them for the good of we the people. But the other thing it did, the evil turned you against your God-given free will. This is why you see the Democrat Party, which is nothing more than a network of dysfunction, a coven of Marxist leftist feminism, out to destroy America. Folks, we hate to be untoward and gauche, but leftism, this Marxist leftist feminism, is mind screwing your children and your grandchildren, folks. Mind screwing. Oh, what does he mean by that? Well, sir, he's whistling because what you just said was right on the mark. You hit the nail right on the head. Well, it's nice for you to notice that I'm exactly right. So, this is what's going on, is they're diminishing your children. They call it education, but they are actually not progressing. They are becoming progressively regressing. Well, what do you mean by that, sir? What I mean is, if you give this enemy construct that is within America enough time, they will take you back to your children, and your grandchildren will become closer to cavemen intellectually than ever to the founding fathers. They are undoing your society. They are making you insecure. They are making you filling you with false self-esteem that goes nowhere. It's circular and leads to nothing good, honest, noble, beautiful, or elegant. And they're filling the minds and hearts of your children with tribalism. You've gone backwards, folks. Don't you understand that? The whole idea of a colorblind society is negated by the Democratic Party that wants to focus on every this, that, and the other. They love these folks on the Democratic Party have become they are worshippers of their color. They are worshippers of their gender. They are worshippers of their preference. They are racists in their minds and in their hearts, and they don't realize that they've become exactly that which the Democrat Party was during slavery and Jim Crow, when the Democrat Party designed and created the KKK. Well, sir, that was a mouthful what you said. But we believe you're exactly right. Well, my good man, of course I'm right. I saw it happen, and I tried to warn the spirit. I tried to touch the people's hearts and the minds. But sometimes the folks won't learn. They have to go through the learning curve and have to deal with the consequences on the other side. But this is what's going on in your society. So you can have the man, someone like Kanye West, trying to do the right thing for a fellow man or fellow woman, telling them to be free thinkers, think for themselves, make their own decisions. Isn't that liberty? Isn't that free will? Well, you would think so. But what does leftism and Democratic Party do with that? They chastise him. They try to put him back in their box. They try to scare everybody back to the talking points of the Democratic Party. Because the Democratic Party, like any tyranny, cannot ever have power unless it terrorizes the people, makes them feel insecure, teaches them to be insecure, teaches them to be unfit, teaches them to not believe in themselves, to not believe in the Creator, not believe in the God-given free will, but to only have reverence and a fear of the state. That's what the Democratic Party's doing, and y'all are falling for it when you should be standing against it proudly. You should stand against it proudly because it's the only hope for America. It's the only hope for Western culture. It's the only hope for love, peace, joy, hope, and happiness, first principles, liberty, and your God-given free will. Well, sir, we're going to have to cut this short. We'll have to get back to this. This is deep, this is heavy, and boy, oh boy, does humanity need to hear this.